Okay, with Baldur's Gate 3 Patch 7 having just been released, I figured what better time than to do 5 fun builds for Baldur's Gate 3. This isn't going to be OP, this can be 5 builds I think are just very fun to play as, and what better way with all the new mods and the evil endings to try out these builds. So without further ado, let's begin with number 1.
To my barbarian build, and I'm even going to throw in a few little items you could use if you choose to. So, in this build we are starting with the Druid. Now, if you're looking for a min-max build, this is not the one for you. This is a fun one, which is going to purely focus on being a tank and worrying in your wall shape. So, we are going to do something that looks a bit like this. Now, this would be my spread. I'd have 14 strength, 10 dex, 16 constitution, 8 intelligence, 16 wisdom, 10 charisma. For level 2, we are sticking with Druid. Now, when it comes to being wall shaping, and if you want to purely focus on the wall shape aspect, Circle of the Moon is your subclass. Okay, at level 3, we are finally dipping into Barbarian. This gives us access to our Rage. At level 2, we stick with Barbarian. This gives us Reckless Attack and Danger Sense. And level 3 is where we dip into our subclass, and this is where we leave the Barbarian behind. So, for this to work, we want to do the Wild Heart one, and we're going to go Bear Heart. And from level 6 to level 12, we focus back on Druid, because that is how our wall shape becomes buffed. And a lot of people will do an ASI, since they have patched this, and I believe this was in patch 5, Tavern Brawler now works in wild shape, and it uses the strength modifier of the animal you are in. So we are taking Tavern Brawler. There is some really good ones though. For example, the Armor of Moonbasking. Now, this is a very good wild shape armor. It gives you 22 temporary hit points once you cast wild shape, and while you have those temporary hit points up, all damage is reduced by 1. So not only does it have you tank 1 extra damage, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but can add up, 22 extra hit points on top of what you already have. And when you think the owlbear has 83 hit points, I think it would be, 22 on top, you're looking at 105 hit points in wild shape form. Very, very good. It also gives you a +2 to armor bonus, or sorry, to armor class, so while you're outside of combat, so if you don't wish to wild shape and you've only got a few little enemies to pick off, your armor class is going to go up by 2. And we have advantage on saving throws against spells, and this stacks into wild shape. Bear that in mind. There's the Shapeshifter's Boon Ring. Now this is a ring that will grant a 1d4 bonus to all ability checks while in wild shape. Now, I think this looks really ugly, but there is a thing called the Shapeshifter's Hat. Now, this is a bit of headwear that increases your wild shape charge by 1, which is really good, because if we go here, you can see we have 3 rage, but only 2 wild shape. So, what this would mean is, by wearing this, you would have 3 and 3, which means you can balance out your rages with your wild shapes before you have to long rest, or short rest, I should say. And then finally, there is the Corvid Token. This is an amulet that allows you to boost your jumping and flying speed by 1.5 meters, and you can cast Featherfall. And Featherfall's effect lasts while in wild shape, which is really good. So we're going to go find some combat, and I will show you exactly how this build works. Okay, so I did just find this weapon, also this helmet. Now, this is when you rage, hostile creatures in a 3 meter radius must succeed a wisdom saving throw or take 2 to 8 psychic damage, and targets receive half damage on a save. Now, I wouldn't pick this over the shapeshifting one, but if this is all you can find, then this is really good for throwing up your rage and just dealing some damage just for using your bonus action to rage. Could be a very good helmet to use, and this is what we're going to use in the guide because I cannot find the Shapeshifter's Hat.
Number 2.
Alright, we are going to make a Plague Doctor build. We're going to start with the Wizard. And for your cantrips, you want to take Poison Spray, Bone Chill, and Acid Splash. For your first level spells, I would take Ray of Sickness, obviously. I would take Shield for some protection, False Life because it's 7 temporary hit points and a Necromancy spell. I would take Longstrider just so we can move further, and Thunderwave and Magic Missile because, I've said it a lot, some of the best spells in the game. For your ability points, we are going to stick with something that looks like this: 8 in Strength, 14 in Dexterity, 16 in Constitution, 16 in Intelligence, 10 in Wisdom, and 10 in Charisma. Okay, Wizard level 2, and this is where we get to pick our specialization. And this is key because we are going with the Conjuration School for one very simple reason you will see later in the build. Alright, at level 3 we are sticking with Wizard. We take Wizard all the way to level 10. Okay, Wizard level 4, this gives us access to another cantrip. So at this point we are going to take Minor Illusion because the Plague Doctor would be nice and sneaky, and this just helps with that. And we have access to 2 more level 2 spells. So as said before, we're going to take Misty Step, and we're going to take Arcane Lock. Number 1, it's a bit of utility, which helps us out. But if you're a Plague Doctor, thematically you would be locking things behind you so you can't get caught. That sort of stuff. And for your ASI or feat, we're going to be doing a ASI and bump our intelligence up to 18. Okay, Wizard level 8. This gives us more access to spells. So for this, I would take Dimension Door, because again, I feel like a Plague Doctor, very sneaky, would run away. I would also take Greater Invisibility to once again tap into that being sneaky and trying to run away. For the ASI, we will stick with that, and we'll take our intelligence up to 20. So now we have the maximum intelligence, which is our spell casting. Okay, now level 11 is where we mix things up, and we're actually going to dip into Rogue, because we want sneak attack, because we are going to be using dex-based weapons. And finally, Rogue level 2. This just boosts our sneak attack a little bit, but it also allows us to have cunning actions, which means we can use a bonus action to dash, disengage, or hide. Really, really good stuff. Okay, so that is our build from 1 to 12. Now, when it comes to equipment, there are 3 things I would have, which unfortunately I cannot put on this build because I don't have access to them. But the first thing would be the Poisoner's Robes. So this is the piece of armor you get from the Face Spider Matriarch in Act 1, and it's just a normal uncommon piece of clothing, but when you deal a spell that deals poison damage, it does an additional 1d4 damage, so it just buffs it up a little bit. Now when it comes to weapons, we are going to be a Plague Doctor, so we are using syringes, because I think this fits very thematically. You could obviously swap this for a Scalpel, or there are Bone Saws, which are strength based unfortunately. For me, keep the syringes, and in Act 2, in the House of Healing, there is an Artificial Leech. Now this is a +1 syringe, which is technically classed as a dagger. This obviously does a little bit more damage than your normal syringes, but it also has Piercing Strike, which can inflict gaping wounds at the end of the turn. It has a chance of doing it basically. So it's just a syringe, but it's a little bit better, and I would throw this on the build personally. Obviously, dye the Poisoner's Robes black, because the Plague Doctor wears long black robes. And for a hood, I would wear the Hood of the Weave. So this is it says it's a helmet, it's just like a hood basically, like a Plague Doctor would wear. However, again, a +2 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls. Really, really good. For other items, I really like the Divination Cloak. Now, the Divination Cloak, when you poison a foe, you heal yourself for 1d4 hit points, and being a poison-based build, we're going to be poisoning a lot of people. If you do not wish to use this, your other option is the Flesh Melter Cloak. Whenever a creature deals melee damage to the wearer, the creature takes 1 to 4 acid damage. So you can either go with a more DPS cloak or a more healing cloak. Again, giving you these 2 options, take what you'd like. For shoes, I would take the Evasive Shoes just to boost our armor class up a little bit. I would take the Poisoner's Gloves, so whenever you deal poison damage, the target needs to make a successful Constitution saving throw or become poisoned. And poisoned is really good because what this means is have a disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks, which means not only do they have less chance to hit, but any other abilities, if you need to do some sort of spell or attack, they're going to have disadvantage on that as well. When it comes to rings, the Strange Conduit Ring, while concentrating on a spell, the wearer's weapon attack deal an additional 1 to 4 psychic damage. Now, it's not acid or poison, but it is a buff to your damage, and since we'll be using Cloud Kill a lot, and we cannot break concentration by being attacked on conjuration spells, this will trigger a lot. Pair that with the Caustic Band, and we do an extra 2 acid damage. So now, lovely little syringes do some sort of form of acid or poison damage. Very good. And for a amulet, we would like to take the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. When your cantrip deals acid damage, add your spellcasting modifier to the damage dealt. Just a nice little boost to your damage there. So if you can swap your robe out for the Poisoner's Robes to do an additional 1d4 damage there, throw on your hood, which will boost your save spell DC and spell attack rolls, and throw in the artificial leech. Not only are you going to be doing poisoning, you can also cause them to have bleed on them and things like that. A really good way of just chipping away enemies.
Number 3.
We're going to make the best archer in Baldur's Gate 3, but it's a bard. And alas, we go bard. And for your stats, this is what I would have. I would focus on dexterity and constitution, just if we do want to hold some concentration spells. Okay, so for this build, there are 2 main things we want. It's an extra attack, and we want action surge. So, to begin with, we're going to go over to fighter at level 2. We're going to take our archery fighting styles. It gives us a +2 bonus to our attacks. And then at level 3, you might be thinking, why not stick with fighter for level 2? We're going to go over to bard again for level 3 overall. So this will be a level 2 bard. We're going to stick with bard at level 3, so we're now level 4 overall. And this will give us our specialization. And we're going to go with College of Swords because this gives us our flourishes. And what we really want is slashing flourish, but we want the ranged version. This allows us to hit 2 enemies at once with a attack. It does use a bardic inspiration, but you'll see how much damage this will do. We are sticking with bard for level 4, level 5 overall. This will give us our first feat. And for your feat, we're going to go with the ASI, and we're going to bump our dex up to 18. Okay, at level 6, we're going to stick with bard for level 5. And bard level 6 is what we've been aiming for the extra attacks. We now make 2 attacks per round. Okay, so now that we are level 8 overall and we have our extra attack, we're going to go to fighter for action surge. This will now give you 4 attacks per round when you action surge. Okay, going with fighter level 3 when we are level 9. This will give us our subclass. Now you might be thinking we're going to take battle master. We're not. We're going to go champion for the improved critical hit. We're going to take the fighter to level 4 when we hit level 10, just because we want the access to the feat. And from here, we will take sharpshooter. And at level 11, we dip back over to bard for level 7. And finally, bard level 8, because we want access to that last feat. What we really care about is the feat. Now, my 2 options would be either the ASI to bump your dex up to 18, or alert. Get a +5 initiative, and you cannot be surprised, because the earlier in the round you are, the quicker we can damage all the enemies with these massive hits we're going to do. Take whatever you fancy. We are going to take the ability improvement though. And bump our dex up to 20. Okay, so that is our build all laid out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some extra items we can equip. So, when it comes to headwear, I like the Mask of Soul Perception. This gives you a +2 bonus to attack rolls, initiative, and perception checks. Really, really good. I think this is a great helmet. Your other option, and I think this is another great option, Savarok's Horned Helmet. So you gain dark vision, but the number you need to roll a critical hit is reduced by 1 again and can stack. So if you stack this with what we took previously, our crits are now only an 18 from being in champion. It will also give you constitution saving throws +1. Very, very good. So really your toss-up is between, do you want to have a reduced critical number or a +2 to your initiative and attack rolls? Again, you cannot really go wrong with your options here. For a cloak, I would take the Cloak of Displacement. So at the beginning of the turn, the cloak activates, granting enemies disadvantage on attack rolls that target the wearer. I think this is amazing. This will last until we take damage. But if we're at the back, in range, we're less likely to get hit anyway. The other option would be the Cloak of Protection, which give you a +1 to your armor class and to your athletics, I believe it is. But if you look on the side, our armor class is already a 23, so I think we can sacrifice the +1. I know 24 armor class is amazing for a bard. I think we can sacrifice though and keep this cloak to make us harder to hit. I like the Nightwalkers. This allows us to not be ensnared, entangled, or webbed, and we cannot slip on ice or grease, which means we can move around the battlefield so much easier. But it also gives us Misty Step, and I think Misty Step is one of the best spells in the game. It's a bonus action, and you can just teleport to wherever you need to be. It's so good. For armor, I really like the Armor of Agility. Now, this allows us to add our dexterity modifier to the armor itself, and because dexterity is what we are using, and the armor is already 17, we have a +5, so we have 22 armor class just from using this armor. It doesn't dispose disadvantage on ability checks, which is phenomenal, and we get +2 to saving throws. I really think this is an amazing piece of medium armor. you can put on any character, especially a dex-based one. When it comes to gloves, I really like the Gloves of Power. On a hit with a weapon attack, possibly inflict a -1d4 penalty to a target's attack rolls and saving throws, and we get the sleight of hand +1. Really, really good. For rings, I like the Caustic Band because this just gives us an extra 2 base damage. 2 extra acid damage per hit, really good as just a base level ring. The Killer Sweetheart, so when you kill a creature, your next attack will be a critical hit. And what's really good about this is when you do this with a slashing flourish, both attacks with your arrow will be critical hits, which means you'll do maximum damage with 2 attacks, but on 1 round. An amazing ring to use. Couple this with the Surgeon's Amulet, and once per long rest when scoring a critical hit on a humanoid, you can paralyze the target for 2 turns. So if you do this on a Viconia or some big boss, if you kill an enemy first, hit them with a critical from Killer Sweetheart, you can then paralyze them for 2 turns after this. It's a phenomenal ability, and we will try and test this out in my little combat tutorial. When it comes to bows, I really like the Darkfire short bow because it gives us resistance to fire and cold damage, but more importantly, it lets us cast haste, which means we can do more attacks per round. Now, if you're looking for some earlier bows, the Hunting short bow is really good. This can be found in Act 1, and it basically just gives you Hunter's Mark, which is a bonus action. Now, it is only once per either short or long rest, I believe, but if you can keep your concentration up by hanging at the back, you're just going to do an additional 1d6, I believe it is, damage per hit on a creature. Very, very strong bow for the beginning of the game. There's also the Dead Shot. So this allows you to reduce your critical hits by 1 and can stack. So once again, if you couple this with the Savrok's Helmet, for example, and with what I'm about to show you, you can reduce your critical hit chance down to a 16. Because what is really good is you can equip some daggers but not need to use them. So if we put this into our main hand, this is the Bloodthirst, the number you need to roll a critical hit is reduced by 1. So now, we as a character, if we equipped all these items, only need a 16 to hit a crit, which is insane. There's also the Gleam Dance Dagger. Now, one of the benefits of this is if you put it into your offhand with the Gleam Dancer, you gain a +1 bonus to your armor class, which is why our AC is 23 overall, 17 from our armor. Because of exotic materials, we add our dexterity, which is +5, that takes us to 22, plus this dagger, 23 AC, and you don't even need to use the weapons. So, we're going to do this 2 ways. I will show you how this looks with this setup, and then I'll equip the other items and show you how this build is with them.
Number 4. Thematically, the Necromancer is probably the most fun and awesome subclass in D&D and Baldur's Gate 3, in my humble opinion. Level 1, we start with the Wizard subclass. For your ability points, we can have 8 Strength, we can have 14 Dex, 16 Constitution, 16 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 10 Charisma. Bringing us very nicely to the Wizard level 2 and the Necromancy subclass. Okay, Wizard level 4, this gives us access to our first feat, but before that we are going to take Shocking Grasp as a cantrip, because I do like the melee capabilities of it. We're also going to take Hold Person, because it's one of my favourite spells in the game. Really nice concentration spell that just allows you to hold people in place. And we're going to couple this with Darkness. Darkness is a really good utility spell, it really helps you throw this down and stop enemies being able to see you, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. Really nice way of nullifying enemies on the battlefield. And for your ASI, we're going to take our intelligence up to 18. Okay, Wizard level 8. Again, we have access to a new feat, but before that we have our spells to choose from. First one we're going to take is Glyph of Warding, because I love this spell. I think it's just phenomenal. Basically turn the glyph into a nuke. So usually you'd put this on the floor, and then when an enemy walks into it, it would trigger and they would get hit with this type of magic. I prefer using it by placing on top of a bunch of enemies, and then at the end of your turn, once you've cast it, it will trigger because there's people already within it. And you can basically turn it into a big old AoE nuke. It's just amazing. We're going to couple this with Fire Shield because I think this is just a really nice way of protecting yourself. If you can have Fire Shield going and Vampiric Touch, you're in a winning combination. And for your feat, you're going to take SI and bump your intelligence up to 20. And finally, we're at level 12, having access to a new feat and more spells. And we get to pick a new feat. And for this one, we are going to come all the way to the bottom. We're going to take Warcaster, just so we get advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration. Okay, so that was that build. levels 1 to 12. Now, for this build to work at its maximum, you should have the Staff of Cherished Necromancy. You can get this in Act 3. You can get this from the Master Carrion side quest. I'm not going to spoil how to do it. Go and seek it out. If, for whatever reason, you haven't got access to it, or you've locked yourself out of it, I'm going to give you an alternative. But the way this build works the best, and with any necrotic or necromancy build works the best, is with the Staff of Cherished Necromancy. Please bear that in mind, because it gives you so many good things. Get disadvantage on saving throws against necrotic spells on your enemies, which means they automatically fail a bunch of stuff. And when you kill an enemy with a spell, you absorb its energy, which means you have life essence, and life essence allows you to cast necromancy spells without using a spell slot, which means you can technically have unlimited necromancy spell slots. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Please go and seek out the Staff of Cherished Necromancy for this build. But if you've locked yourself out of it, or you haven't got it, whatever, then these would be your options, in my opinion. We're going to take the Cloak of Displacement, which means we, at the beginning of our turn, the Cloak will activate and give disadvantage on attack rolls, which is perfect. It helps us maintain concentration, helps us stop taking damage. We're going to take the Disintegrating Nightwalkers. This gives us Misty Step and ensures we can't be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, can't slip on ice or grease. We're going to take the Robe and the Hood of the Weave. These are great because they add +1 bonus to spell save DC, and when we save a saving throw, we regain 1 hit points, and it bumps our armor class up by 2. The Hood of the Weave, I can't quite remember what it does. I also seem to have misplaced it, don't know why, but make sure you pop that on. We're going to take the Brace of Defense, so again, +2 bonus to armor class, as long as we're not using a shield or wearing armor, and of course, as you can see, we are not. We're going to take the Snowburst Ring, so when we deal cold damage, we also create a 4.5 meter circle of ice around the target, which is really good, because if you do this on a melee character, they have more chance of slipping as soon as they try and start walking. We're going to take the Spellcrux Amulet, because this gives us a spell slot restoration. And if you haven't got access to the Staff of Cherished Necromancy, make sure you take Marker Share. Kind of does a similar thing in terms of you can use Arcane Battery to get a spell slot for free, but the Staff of Cherished Necromancy is exactly the stuff you want for this build. Number 5.
We made a Frost Knight, so now let's make a Ice Princess, a Snow White almost, you could say, even though it has nothing to do with Snow White, but we're going to crack this out. We're going to begin this build a little weird for level 1. We're going to go with Fighter. And this would be my stat array, so we're going to bump our strength all the way down. We're going to leave our Constitution at 16 and our Charisma at 16. These are our main two. And our Dexterity at 14. Okay, level 2 onwards, we are going to take Sorcerer. Now, we're going to start this with our cantrips. First things first, we have to take Ray of Frost. We're going to take Shocking Grasp because water and electric kind of go hand in hand. We're going to take Minor Illusion just for a little bit of adaptability. And we will take Dancing Lights. For spells, we're going to take Ice Knife. And we're going to take Shield. And Draconic Bloodline. And of course, we're going with white for cold or silver for cold. It's entirely up to you. And again, you can pick any of these that you feel fit. Okay, Sorcerer level 2. Okay, Sorcerer level 3, and we are working our way through here. Sorcerer level 4, we have more spells available, and this leads us to a feat. So we're going to start off with Mage Hand. And for our spell, I would take Misty Step, just because I really like the option of being able to move around the battlefield a bit easier. And for your feat, based on what you want to do, I would personally take the Charisma modifier, put up to +4. Okay, Sorcerer level 5. Now we have access to 3rd level spells. Sorcerer level 6, and this is where our Elemental Affinity comes in. Sorcerer level 7, we now have access to 4th level spells. Sorcerer level 8, we have access to a new feat. Now for our ASI, we are once again boosting our Charisma to get the maximum amount of damage we can from our cold spells. Sorcerer level 9. Sorcerer level 10, now we have 93 health, which is pretty good for a Sorcerer. Okay, Sorcerer level 11, now we do have Fly as an action. This could be pretty good if you can do this as a quicken spell, as a bonus action. You could fly somewhere. Honestly though, Misty Step, in my opinion, is probably better. So this might not be the most helpful. And for your 6th level spell, Chain Lightning. Strike an enemy with lightning. 3 more bolts will leap from the target, electrifying as many as 3 other enemies within 18 meters. A phenomenal spell. The other option you have is Glow of Invulnerability. You only get to pick one of these, so choose wisely, but this could be really good for throwing it up on yourself, standing inside it so you're concentrating, and then blasting people to the outside. They won't be able to attack you inside, and if you can... It's odd, if you can get this up and then have another character cast haste on a character, and you're both inside the globe, theoretically you could have 10 rounds of haste that cannot be dropped because you're inside the globe and cannot be hit. But that will depend on your party composition. For me, I would go DPS and I would take Chain Lightning. Okay, so that is the build for our Ice Princess Snow White-esque character. Let us look at some equipment, and as you can see, we are wearing the Weave Mother's Robe. This is an Act 3 piece of equipment, but it is phenomenal. With this, you get +1 to armor class. We have resistance to fire and cold damage. We have the Create or Destroy Water spell, and Watery Rejuvenation. As the character wearing it, if we stand in a water surface at the start of our turn, we heal for 1d4 hit points, which means if we can throw water at our feet, stand in it, we will continuously heal until that water has evaporated. Very, very good ice and water-based equipment. Next up, let's look at weapons. So, my first choice, but this does come with a prefix, Morning Frost. Now, this is an Act 1 staff, so you could get it very early on. It will deal 1d4 cold damage if you hit it melee, but it has Heart of Ice, so when dealing cold damage, the wielder deals an additional 1 cold. So you just deal an additional 1 point of damage on top of the ice damage you're already dealing. It also has Insidious Cold, so when dealing cold damage, the spell could inflict chill upon the targets. And it has Ray of Frost, which we can cast as a cantrip. But please note, the Ray of Frost that comes with this staff uses Intelligence as the spellcasting modifier. As a sorcerer, our spellcasting is based on Charisma. That's the one downside to this. You have to make sure you select the correct Ray of Frost cantrip from your spell list, otherwise you are going to be nerfing yourself without meaning to. For an endgame weapon, I would take the Staff of Spell Power. Now this is a staff you can get in Act 3, and what's special about it is it has Arcane Enchantment, so you gain a +1 bonus to spell save DC and spell attack rolls, and Arcane Battery, which means once per long rest, I believe it's once per long rest, please don't quote me on that, the next spell you cast will not expend a spell slot, which is really good because you could theoretically throw up a Ray of Frost, turn your Arcane Battery on, and then do a massive Chain Lightning, or a massive 4th level spell, and completely save the spell slot. If you want to have 2 rounds of big damage dealing, that could be the staff for you. Now let's look at some more equipment. When it comes to rings, the Snowburst Ring is amazing. When the wearer deals cold damage, they also create a 4.5 meter circle of ice around the target. This is great because if you hit this on a melee character, or if you hit a melee character with a ranged ice attack, they will then be surrounded by ice and they have more chance of falling prone and therefore ending their turn as soon as they try and move into melee range of someone. We have the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. Now this, when we cast a cantrip, so in our case Ray of Frost, we add our spellcasting modifier to damage dealt, which at the beginning of the game is +3, and at the end of the game is +5. Now again, it's not a huge amount of damage, but if we can stack a bunch of this damage on top of each other, our attacks can go from, let's say, a 10 to a 15. It's that easy. For gloves, Winter's Clutches. When the wearer deals cold damage, inflict 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost. Once again, just pairing up all this frost damage and trying to really immobilize people. Now the good thing with Encrusted with Frost is if you can stack 7 amounts of this on a target, they will then become frozen for 2 rounds. So you can really help immobilize characters by continuously hitting them with ice, building up this Encrusted with Frost, and therefore they just cannot move. Couldn't find a cloak that really benefits cold damage, but I did find the Cloak of Protection, which has +1 to armor class and a +1 to your saving throws. Now for a hat, this is what pairs really nicely with the Winter's Clutches, and this is the Cold Brim Hat. This is a hat that, once per turn, any condition inflicted on a target also applies 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost. And if you can stack these items together, you can build this Encrusted with Frost up, more likely to again get the 7 encrusted with frost on a target, and therefore they become frozen. And for a shield to boost our AC, we have the Absolute's Protector. This allows us to do Fire Shield Chill. This means we only take half damage from all fire damage, which is kind of irrelevant thanks to the lovely gown we are wearing. But anyone that hits us with a melee attack will take 2d8 cold damage.